Hello and welcome to Morgan Latif Presents. On this episode, I'll be speaking to Xavier Hamers on leadership styles, mentoring talent, and navigating your career to C-suite. Now, let me tell you, you will gain so much value from the knowledge that was shared in this podcast. I know you're going to enjoy it, so let's get into it. You've had time off. You've been away on a sabbatical, so I'd love to know a little bit more about what you've been doing in that time.
Yeah, indeed, you're right. So I took some time to, after I would say 20 years of career and working hard without any limitations. Sometimes also time, because time flies by, to do something. So I've been now recently on a rally. So I've been doing an off-road rally, and that's something I always was dreaming of. And normally you don't have the time for that. Plus, because it's not only driving a rally, you also need to prepare a car and everything. So that's something I did, and it was fantastic. So I did it together with my son. And it was good for him because he was kind of, okay, why should we do a rally? Why do we get all the papers? Why do we get every morning a briefing? We just take Google Maps and we just drive. Okay, that works in Spain. And then we moved over to Morocco. So we went to Africa, into the sand or into the stones, and afterwards then the Sahara. And then suddenly
Wow.
he realized why. So I think that was good. It was a great experience. I think it's also good for your own mental, I would say, strengths, because on one side you have to relieve, on one side you have to leave everything behind you and focus on what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're driving between 10 and 12 hours a day. So and it's not like, normal UK or European highway roads. There is sometimes no roads, and you just have to battle you through. Yeah.
10, 12 hours a day. That's quite something. Were you drinking lots of Red Bull or something just to keep yourself awake, or what?
You're right. So that was indeed, we took a lot of with it. And I would say it was something, normally if people who know me say, okay, when I'm going somewhere, I always need to have a decent breakfast, and otherwise I don't start a day. So these 2.5, let's say, weeks have been completely different, because we had briefing between 6 and 7:30 in the morning, a little bit depending on how many kilometers a day. And then, so normally I had no breakfast. I always miss my breakfast, no lunch. And people who know me, normally after that, you cannot use me anymore. But you have this kind of, fluid lunch. So I just drink a lot of this stuff, and Red Bull, as you said, in the afternoon helps a lot. Normally I'm against that, but now I used it.
Anything to bond with the kids, right?
Exactly.
Oh, brilliant. Appreciate it. No, so thanks very much for that. And yeah, obviously we're talking about leadership. We're going to get into a lot of different topics, and it's such an interesting one because obviously being in this market where I'm engaging with leaders all over the world from lots of different cultures and multi-billion-dollar companies, all the way to even small family-owned businesses that are trying to grow. Leadership is a constant theme that everyone talks about because it is the catalyst to growth a lot of the time. And but at the same time, getting it right is also the most important topic, and that's why I think it's also such an interesting topic, because maybe there is no right answer, and there's just so many different ways to do it. And so, from your experience, what would you say, or how important would you say are leadership styles? Because they're such buzzwords in the world these days, and how important would you say they are?
Yeah, I think first of all, when you said, that's why I was laughing a little bit. When you said, okay, nothing is right or nothing is wrong. I think exactly that is correct. So there is no patent to say, okay, this is the right leadership style, and like that it should work. I think it's more, it's a little, at least my experience, and today we talk a little bit about my experience, and what I can share with everybody is about understanding the leadership style should fit to the company. I think that is something that is extremely important. And I discovered by myself that you have to find the company what suits to you. So don't try to, of course, you can learn a lot. Of course, you can train on leadership style, but you cannot change your own personality. So if you want to be someone else as a manager, I think that you can do it for 1 or 2 years, but you won't be able to do it for 20 or 40 years. And at the end of the day, we all have to work a little bit longer than 2 years. And so you have to find the company what suits to you. But I think anyway, there are still some basic principles you should, in my opinion, you should care about a leader, about a good leader. And it's about care about your team and care and listen. I think listening so giving a clear direction about what is the objective, what is the focus, is something I think what you have to have in mind as a leader. You have to work out, and you have to drive clearly that forward. But on the moment of execution and you start, let's say, going into the strategy or going into a project, at that moment, you also have to pay a lot of attention to the environment around you. So do you get the buy-in of the people? Did they understand the objectives? Have you been clear and transparent in your message? And for that, you always need to, get this kind of also feedback. And so it's not only driving like a captain a boat or sailing and going one direction. At the end of the day, by sailing, you also need more than only the captain. So and that is the same in normal leadership and management style. The same. So you do it with your team, and your team members, don't underestimate them and don't put them as stupid or something. Listen to them and have a very open discussion. And that's something what I always did. So always. I think maybe it's also based because I'm Dutch and it's maybe a little bit normal. We are open in, let's say, sending feedback, but also receiving feedback. And especially I think about receiving feedback is extremely important. And yes, you can, at the end of the day, you can be proud on what you did when you're completely convinced about yourself. But at the end of the day, if you don't create the shareholder value, then okay, it's worthless. You can feel happy, but you didn't contribute to the company. And at the end of the day, that's our job. To let's say create shareholder value, and if this is going in the right direction, then of course you also you get more space, you can have more investments for the company, you can develop a company and the people and the skill sets around you. So that's
it's interesting because I think interesting point that you just said there. It's kind of like, to summarize a little bit what you were saying, you take the goal, so if that is to increase shareholder value, so to speak, and then I suppose you're assessing the scenario of, you're reverse engineering, okay, what would need to happen in order to get to that goal.
To achieve that goal.
And as a leader, sometimes it is kind of depending on the company, what kind of style would fit with this company in order to get to that goal. Or it might even be, if it's a global or international business with maybe very fragmented functions, but not much harmony between each business and so on. Maybe you have a different style for each one, and so that's how it becomes granular and becomes difficult to know this is the particular way that you do it. And there is that element, like you talk about, self-reflection and also assessing or reading the room, so to speak, as well. I mean, it's interesting because when I speak to people, especially going into global businesses, usually they get a shock going from German kind of family-owned culture to a big American corporation, or could be German family-owned business breaking into China, let's just say. And it's like, and the reason that shock generally happens is because they've obviously tried to apply the same of what they've been doing now to doing that as well. Have you seen that? Have you experienced that? Like, what was your kind of experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can 100% I can confirm that, and I think that's also something. It's sometimes funny because we make jokes in Germany about it often. So, like the German engineer who is always very strict and very quality oriented, and that is, of course, is good. Yeah, it's a good habit. And now the but comes, or on the other hand, you also have to understand different markets and different customer needs. And at the end of the day, we are all in business to deliver a product, to deliver a service to our customers. And so you have to be open for that. And it is something also when you take a look on the American side, it's a completely different habit, and they don't maybe need the 150% engineered stuff. Yeah, it just should suit to the budget, and that's fine. And that's sometimes difficult to understand. But it also then comes back to the kind of company structure you find in the United States, or you go to China, or let's say Asia, because I think it's more kind of Asian culture you have there. You also there, if you talk about management style, but maybe in Germany, or especially let's say in Holland, you can directly say, okay, guys, this is wrong. You don't have to do it like that. Come on, how can we do it better? If you go with this style to China, they will completely be afraid. Secondly, you will never get the honest answer, because they will always explain why they are not guilty and why it's not like that. So you lose a lot of time in this. So I think that is something and at the end of the day, it comes always back to create trust. People are ready to open up, and I think that is, in my opinion, very important in management, is that you get the trust of your team. So if people have the trust that you won't kill them, you don't fire them tomorrow, but you want to achieve together with them a certain target, and you have a certain ambition to reach, and you're clear in that, then you go together on that journey and to achieve this target. And yes, it's always in life, things don't go as you promise, or would you like, or I should wish, and you have to manage and steer around that to achieve that target. And how can you do that, in my opinion, as most efficient? If you have a team what's trust in you. If they have trust, they will also be open to talk about things who go wrong, yeah, and things who go, let's say, maybe not as planned. And then what I always told to my team, and something also I learned, is that don't try to micromanage your team. Yeah, they give them a responsibility, give them also the credibility to do and to take decisions and to make mistakes. I think that's very important. Not mistakes all the time, or at least learn out of those mistakes. And if you have a meeting, come up with a solution and how they would like to, let's say, make a corrective action. And then they come a little bit back to the point, okay, about measurement. So you cannot, as a manager, you cannot control everything, and don't start micromanagement. You will kill yourself straight away, or at least within 3 months. So you need to find a methodology, and it's depending, of course, in country by country, yeah, and the way how you follow up on that. So in Europe, you can be quite strict on following up. In the US, you can be even more direct on that. In China, you have to, or in Asia, you have to be a little bit careful. But people can always understand if you are clear in the targets what needs to be achieved, and if you are also following up on frequent basis on that, and not at the final KPIs, but some steps in between. Yeah, so key KCIs, key change indicators, for example, I love to apply because there you can see if you're on the right track. And then people can also measure themselves and see, okay, benchmark a little bit, have a kind of mirror in front of them. Am I in time or not? And it makes it also then easier also to have a discussion about the facts. So be strong on the facts and soft on the person. That's something I learned many years ago from somebody, and I think that's still valid. You can have an intensive discussion about not achieving targets, but don't try to make it personally. It's better together to focus on, okay, what can we do to achieve this target? And then if you see that people are not able to achieve it, okay, then you can start talking about personal, let's say, competence, skills, and disappointments. But don't make people afraid. Then they will never deliver on. They only will, I would say, they will deliver you fantastic, beautiful PowerPoints telling you that they are all on track and everything is green. Yeah? And the point is, if you are the manager, then 3-6 months later, then you will discover that nothing is green and everything is red or orange. And then you lost 6 months of time. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to get these, let's say, to get your team on board. And yes, you're right. It's depending on culture and country by country. And so you have to adjust a little bit. But, you know, Excel and numbers, everybody can understand. And you can talk strictly about those things. And I think that makes life, between brackets, on the management side a little bit easier. So
that's so valuable. I can really see that as well. And it's interesting you were saying, like, you know, be soft on the person and hard on the target sort of thing. And it's actually, I think a lot of people maybe make that mistake, maybe from a stress point of view, because if they're getting downward pressure,
definitely,
right, then the conversation's all about targets, and then generally that gets passed down onto the person below, and the pressure just goes down. That's when you start to see businesses or teams spiral out of control, because they lose their indifference, they lose that unique value, that personal value. All of a sudden, it just becomes about money, and they're stretching for the targets, and it's a very. And then when you're trying to hire people into that team, they're just like, I can't wait to get out this door, because it's just such a stressful environment. Whereas if you take that away from them, the targets are there, but let me coach and mentor you, which kind of takes us nicely into the next point, which was about, you know, how do we mentor this talent? How do we build that culture and build that internal proactiveness, accountability, passion for the target or passion for the business? Because I was always taught, like I came into management quite early. I helped run a small business, but I was managing up to teams of 40 people from all different range of ages, people from 40 years old all the way down to 17 years old. And being young, I think I was 20, 21, 22 years old. It was all about me. This is what I want to achieve. This is what I want to achieve. And my boss at the time said, Joe, like, nobody's going to be motivated about what you want to achieve. It doesn't matter. And you know, when I was behind targets, guess what I did? Straight down to you guys at the bottom.
Push. Exactly.
And then really he taught me how that get everyone to go away and create their own goal of what they want to achieve and hold them accountable to it. And that's one way of doing it. But obviously it's a little bit deeper than that. But how, you know, from your experience, how are you mentoring talent? How are you getting the best out of people? What was your sort of approach to that?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things indeed to do. I think a couple of them you also highlighted. So first of all, of course, be transparent about the target. Yeah, as a group or as a company we need to achieve, and then take a look on, okay, what can this person act or contribute to that? Yeah, and then talk with the team about their ambition. And I think there's nothing wrong to explain that when you have a target or you have an ambition is something you would love to achieve, but it's not granted. Otherwise, it wouldn't be ambitious. Yeah. So the word is anyway telling that. So talk about ambition. It's already something moving away from targets, because targets, people directly get afraid. And what do? They say, okay, my target is 100. Okay, I will negotiate it down to 80, and maybe I will achieve 90, and I'm happy, and I look good. So you will never get the utmost out of it, because everybody is afraid not achieving the target. So when you start talking about ambition, that is something people like to be ambitious. And if you're also clear about this is an ambition, and of course there is no guarantee we're going to make it, and people will set the ambition, to stay with the same example, probably on 130. Yeah. And they will achieve, okay, of course, if you have an ambition, always things goes wrong. Maybe they achieve 115. But compare the 115 to the 80 or the 90, you have still a couple of points more. Yeah. So and like this, you create trust, and that's my second point. So one, talk about ambition. Secondly, show clearly that, okay, this is an ambition, and if we talk about if we don't achieve it, okay, nobody will die, because and of course then when we didn't achieve it, don't shoot the guy. Yeah, because you do it once and the whole company will know it. Yeah. So don't do that. So stay to your words, be honest, and also be reliable as a manager. If you do that, then people will trust, and at the end of it, it's as easy as it is. People would like to work with people and let's say go for the extra mile if you have the feeling, okay, it's also worth it. Yeah. Some people say, okay, I have my 9-to-5 job and I get paid for that. I don't care. That's maybe basic stuff. But at the end of the day, if they have the feeling that there is somebody who cares about it and who is really motivated and knows where he's talking about it, then also those people, suddenly you can, trigger something, and suddenly you can get an ambition or some inspiration, and they would like to do something more. So be about ambition, be honest, and also be very clear in the feedback. I think that is also something what is in leadership extremely clear. And also when you mentor people, give an honest feedback. Yeah, don't sugarcoat it. I know it's sometimes people have difficulties, so you also need to observe. If you give a kind of, I would say, criticism, or you give a kind of feedback what is often not positive, yeah, give it as a direction of, okay, as a reflection, and say, okay, how did you see it? Because of course it's only my point of view as a manager on the person, but the person himself has his own point of view. Try to calibrate that together and try to understand why you have often these different opinions, because nobody will like to say, okay, I've been doing a lousy job, but try to find out why, and this reasons what is behind it. And that is also something what I always say, okay, don't blame somebody else. Yeah, don't say, but I couldn't deliver, or I couldn't perform because of he didn't call me, he didn't came to me. No, what could I have been doing better to make this result or achieve the ambition in a higher score, in a higher way? And I think if you create this kind of mentality about self-reflection, being honest about that, as a mentor, then you can also provide your experience and know-how as a kind of guidance, yeah, to say, okay, maybe next time try this and this. Don't tell people how to do it, because everybody's different. Everybody has to make his own experience. What you can do is give them a good advice, and if they have the feeling that you give an advice, they let's say use it and they explore a good result out of that, then they will, it's a kind of self-motivation to say, okay, I will be more criticism, I will be more, let's say, self-reflecting. I will ask maybe for help or for a different opinion. And then you create a kind of, different energy in a team, and you get much more power out of it, instead of focusing on KPIs and telling people they didn't achieve it, and next time they
Yeah.
have to do better. Yeah, that is maybe easy out of a management point of view, that it doesn't take a lot of time, because you get a PMO, the PMO will deliver you a kind of overview, and you just take a look at it and everything is on red. You will get the people in and tell them that next time. But at the end of the day, that doesn't create a kind of environment where people are striving for the maximum. And I think that is something what always, at least what I learned during my career, because I had exactly the same. When I was 22, I had the same. I was also pushing. I had my targets and go through the wall. Yeah, achieve them. And then suddenly you are on your own through the wall. You will make it. That's no problem. It will cost you a lot of energy, and you can copy that for the future, because when you grow in your career, you will have bigger challenges. You have bigger things. You will have to have a team behind you where you can rely on in both directions. They can rely on you, that you have wide shoulders to let's say, keep the pressure away from them, that they can do their job and take responsibility in that direction, and also stand in for your team. And if you create that, that's something I learned, let's say, during my career, and you have to adapt to that. So nobody's perfect, and you can learn day by day.
It is amazing the clarity of thought you can have when you're not getting that crazy pressure, and also you've got the platform also to almost express yourself in what you're doing, but we kind of attack it without fear. I think that's a huge thing. Obviously, the right amount of pressure is important, and I think that's why you were saying being clear with the targets and being clear with where we're at, and that creates its own pressure. But and it's interesting. I was laughing when you were saying, because not giving the solutions but kind of giving a little bit of advice and sort of from your experience, because I was just thinking of, like, I can never, my wife always tells me like the things that are going wrong, but at the moment I give a solution, she's like, I'm not interested. But then I'll see my sister give the exact same advice and she's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'm like, I was going to
take that.
But no, I've always learned as well, just from people, that it is true. It's like, it's giving advice, and then they'll sort of digest that and then use that in their life. Have you found that, because you've managed global teams, people from multiple different cultures, this approach again is used depending on the culture, or is it generally it's an instinctive thing that if you can get to that point with people, that they have the same reaction, so to speak?
Yes, it's very funny, because in my opinion, my experience, there's only a matter of time. There's a kind of time lap behind it. So if you take a look to, let's say, Europeans, Americans, they are, I would say, quite fast in that. Of course, you also have difference in everybody, because you have some people who are the front runners, and they say, okay, nice idea, they run and go. I always say it's the kind of the kind of 20-60-20. Yeah. So if you have a change or you have some things to achieve, 20%, maximum 20% will say, good idea, even not knowing, and they will just run. Yeah. Then you have the rest, the 60%, who says, sounds interesting, well, let's see. Yeah. And they will come on, but they are normally the stronger contributors afterwards, but it's fine. And then you have 20% who are, I would say, or maximum 20, normally it's less, but we could say, let's call it 20, who will just say, okay, I'm happy what I'm doing, I don't care, I don't need that, I'm just doing my job. And it's also fine. Yeah. Don't try to convince the last 20%. They have a lot of experience. Often they are many years with the company. They do a fantastic job. Okay, that's fine. But they're just not looking for all this new fancy stuff or new experiences, and it's okay. That's good. You don't need 100%. And I think that is something you need to have on board. So this kind of openness and direction. But coming back to the question, I think globally it's more or less always the same, especially now when you see that the world is more, the globalization is let's say is across, everybody's is open. And yes, of course you have different ways of hierarchy level. If you compare India maybe to the US, you have complete different ways, yeah, right? And that's also fine. But at the end of the day, it takes a little bit longer. I think in Asia, it maybe takes a little bit longer till you come to that step of trust, because they still have a kind of out of history, and also out of their education, a kind of top-down approach. So some of them will be a little bit afraid of, oh gosh, what is going to happen? They miss a kind of direction. and where maybe European Americans are more easy and say, okay, this is my direction. Okay, I don't care, let me go, and it's fine. But if you motivate then this 20% of the people who are the front runners in Asia, the other colleagues will be very interesting and to see, because they're very eager. Yeah, and if they see, hey, this is working out, they will follow fast. And it's very
Sure.
Also, I would not say, it's very interesting and also motivating to see what kind of power you can release in a company then once you pass this moment. It takes longer, but when it moves, then people, and you get a lot of interesting discussions, then suddenly they dare, I would even say they dare to discuss together. And it's funny if then, for example, then their Chinese boss is coming into the meeting room, suddenly they go a little bit back in their old habits. It's very funny to see. So if they but I think it's normal. So you have to be open for that. You also have to observe, in this case, then what is happening, and don't try to force on that moment people when they are out of the, let's say, in fact, they leave their comfort zone. Yeah. And if people leave their comfort zone, it's very fragile. So in the moment something goes wrong, they will directly go back and they will not try it again. So it's a kind of, do it step by step. Let them have a good experience, and if this is good, then they will be eager to take the next step. Yeah, but it needs time, and it needs a kind of little steps forward and also backwards. Some things will go wrong. Yeah, what is also fine.
Yeah.
And then it's even, I think then it's, as a manager, very important as a leader to say, okay, fine, this went wrong. Okay, can happen. But normally it's not 100% wrong. Yeah, so it's always a kind of, we didn't fully achieve it. So, and then it's a question about, okay, so what are we going to do now to make it happen, or what are the ideas out of the team to have some corrective measures or to achieve it? And then you need also to get this, let's say, kind of, maybe it's a wrong word, but let's say delegation of authority. Yeah, it's maybe not the nicest word. It's kind of a little bit formal, but you need to delegate authority, and it means they also need to take responsibility as well accountability for it. So it's also about, if you don't achieve this, it's not an upwards delegation. You cannot accept an upwards delegation. Okay, now you as a leader, you have now to solve it. No, guys, we are into the boat together. This was your ambition. We didn't achieve it. So what is your idea to make it happen? And that is sometimes difficult, because you have already the idea in mind, and sometimes you have to be patient, and you cannot say, okay, they're all stupid, why don't they get it? Because everybody needs to get his experience. And as I also did during 20 years, I learned day by day. And yes, now I do things completely different than I did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that's good. And probably in 10 years, I will do again things completely different. So you always have to develop yourself there too.
Yeah, it's that mindset of continuous improvement, which we were talking about before we started. But it is. I'm surprised at that answer, but at the same time, not surprised when you were saying about, actually, it is pretty much the same. And you're right, though. We are probably the most global in our mindsets than we've ever been in history, just by the way that the whole world is connected. And so that has to change the way that people perceive and receive ideas as well. And leadership, people will follow success. You mentioned that the 20% is like, I'm not really interested in the 60%. Let's see. But the moment they start to see people's lives being made easier and also being more successful, people are going to follow that all the time, because we like to be comfortable. We like to take the path of least resistance naturally. So when you see people doing that, you fall into that funnel as well. And it must be so satisfying as a leader once you start to see that come through as well. It must be really exciting.
Yeah, it is extremely exciting, but it's also, in the beginning, it's very challenging. So it sounds maybe easy, but it's not. I don't want to make it too easy, because at the end of the day, you will have a lot of people who are just looking for people to fail. And it's fair, because at the end of the day, we're all used to our habits. So by yourself, if you're used to, I don't know what, to put the soap on the right side across the sink, and you're doing this since 5 years, and one day you put on the left side, you will need a couple of weeks to reprogram your mind, go left and not right. And people are looking sometimes also to fail, especially you have the guys who are in the front who run, and then there are a lot of people who say, let's see. And I think it's very important for the success of a company that if the first ones are moving, the first movers, even if it's not perfect, don't kill them, because then you will have the rest of the 80% who is saying, you see, I thought so. This is not going to happen. You know, things will never change. It has been always like that. And I think that is something very important to be extremely careful in that. Yeah. Sometimes, and yes, there is pressure always. And that's something in life. When you decide to take management role, there will be always pressure. Yeah. If you can withstand that, don't do it. Yeah. Stay out of it and go selling ice or chocolate or I don't know what. But don't do that. And then it's very important to stand up for your team and let those first movers give the time to make a mistake, to learn from it, and be successful. Because once, as you said correctly, once the success suddenly comes, then the rest will follow fast, because everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants, but it's a very, very delicate phase, let's say, when you start this change from maybe a very, let's say, traditional way of management to a kind of new modern way of management, what in my opinion is needed. Yeah, a lot of companies are stuck or limiting themselves by not being flexible. There's a lot of, and I'm always telling, a lot of potential within the company. Yeah, a lot of very, let's say, skilled people, but just to unleash this potential, they need to have a certain freedom. And often bad experience out of the past just blocks this off. And that is, as a manager, I think you can get a lot out of a company just by the existing team, yeah, and unleash this potential. But for that, you have to be patient. It's not the easiest way. Of course, sometimes it sounds easy. Okay, you know, I will find a headhunter. I will replace 30% of the management, and then everything is fine. Why? That's the headhunter will say, of course, yes, I will take the contract. Yeah, sign it, I will search people. But you have so many experienced people. There's such a value in the company. And I mean, bottom line, the value of a company is not the building. Yeah, it's maybe a number of patents. Yes, but especially it's the skill set and the competence of the people you have on board. Yes, with AI and robotics, we can do a lot, but there's still the human factor, what is still having a high value. And that's something also I always try then to get out of a company.
No, that is so fascinating. And obviously, because obviously you've gained that experience as you've naturally grown in your career, and one of the questions I get asked a lot, especially when I'm dealing with people that are maybe in leadership already, that are wanting to take their career to the next level, whether that is going from director level to VP level or going from VP up to the C-suite, because that is the kind of the big moment of taking the step up. You know, from your experience, how would you say that you nurtured your career to get to that point? Because obviously you've kind of progressed that way. And what advice would you give to people that are really trying to do that?
Yeah, I think the things you can say, okay, can you plan everything in life? That's, you know, my wife always say you need to plan that. I say, forget it. You cannot plan everything in life. So I think you can also not plan. You cannot plan your career as I would like to be in 1 year there and 2 years. Yes, I know there are a lot of stories and books you can read about. Fine. I don't believe it, but that's my personal opinion. I think on one side, don't try to put everything a timeline. In the beginning of my career, I changed a couple of times company because I was impatient. I think to the 20 years, stay with the 20 years, 22 years age, you are impatient, you want to move things fast. And if things doesn't move fast as you would like to, okay, you will take a decision, you move on.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's good because you get a lot of experience. You have a chance in that age to see a lot of companies, different management styles and everything. So you should always keep your eyes open. Then on the second step, you have to continuously learn and invest and train yourself. So that's something I always did. Yeah. And then there will be always opportunities coming up during your career or during you doing a job. And don't wait to somebody who is going to say, would you like to do a next step? No, if you think there is a kind of opportunity or there's a kind of project or a challenge, you are the right fit to that because you have the skill set, you have the ambition, you have the time, then volunteer and go for that. Because coming a little bit back to the point of trust, that always counts. Who you want to give a project, who you want to give a new step in a company, people in the network you trust, people who have been proven that they have managed challenges in the past quite well, So these are the guys or the ladies you want to put first in this kind of position. And that's something what worked always for me quite well. So it's not about trying to change every year than a next company. Yes, you can try to do that. Maybe it's also maybe a methodology, but I did it differently. So I worked always very ambitious on my targets, and as well on opportunities, on special projects. And if you prove on that, people will consider you in the next step. And then of course always you have to volunteer and have to, I would say, yeah, maybe also something I'm very, how to say, very sensitive for is don't try to sell yourself all the time as the perfect manager. Yeah, because results counts. It's not storytelling. On the other side, of course, not only results count, you should also talk a little about the achievements. So you have to find the right balance because often, of course, people will use the good results for their own, let's say, career and their own stuff. So you have to find a good balance between achieving the targets, talk about your successes, don't make fairy tales out of that. I think that's the worst what can happen, because it won't take long and people will find out that's just a story, and then you get a next chance. And if you have the next step, yeah, then try to build a team around you. So also be very clear about, I've been always being clear about my strengths, but even more about my weaknesses, because the weaknesses is the things you can improve. So you can train on that, or you have to build a team around you who fit into that. So don't be afraid of hiring people who are better than you, better experts. I think it can only help yourself, and it will contribute to the company. So that are things I'm always doing, and then you develop. In my opinion, you will get plenty of opportunities. And don't believe always the calls you get every day or every week from headhunters and promising you next career step and blah. And you know,
people like me,
people like you, exactly. They will promise you the whole world, yeah, and they will promise you to. On the other side, the grass is much greener. I don't think so. The grass, the color is always green, and it's always the same color. You will have different challenges, yeah. So it's not about trying to change. I think, and that's why I just said it as a kind of joke, but you know it. I think you have to be very honest about the challenges, and don't believe somebody, you know, on his storytelling. And okay, so I may make a quick, career step, and then everything is fine. I have the next level. Nothing is for free in life. Nothing is given. You have to perform and deliver everywhere. So sometimes it's also good to see within your company, to evaluate. And I did the same. So to take a look in the company, what are my opportunities? You have the next step. And yes, of course, on a certain moment, there will be a kind of, there is no free space for doing a next career step. But then you have a lot of experience within the company. And then you can think about, okay, what is else outside? What is the kind of the industry I like? Yeah. But don't do everything for your career. Stay to your own roots. So stay to the industry or the kind of technology you love or you feel familiar with. You can identify yourself with. It's coming a little back to the beginning. Don't be yourself, yeah. And because if you feel comfortable, people will feel that, and if people feel that, it will be also something what gives them trust and say, okay, yes, this feels good. Let's go for him. If you're just trying to play a game, it won't last long. You will not have the results and achievements. So that's something I did, and I think that's in my DNA. So if you will ask me tomorrow, can you manage a company who is producing packets of 1 liter milk? I would say, and you pay me a fortune, I would say, nice, but it's nothing for me. So because it doesn't fit to my, let's say, thinking. I like to be in the technical industry, a little bit complex products where you need to have consultative selling, so not the almost easy stuff. And that's something what I like. And if you would ask me tomorrow, but I have a great job for GE, so a big multinational, I would say thank you, but it's nothing for me. Because you also need to know where do you suit to. And that is, I think, something you will find out over the years. It's not something what is, because you find out by experience and say, okay, this is nice, this is a small company, I don't like, this is a bigger company, it's too big. And if you don't like politics, don't go to a multinational. I mean, this kind of stuff you can learn and you can feel and find something what suits to you, and then you can make a good career, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's interesting you were saying about learning and having this improvement mindset, and also focusing on the task at hand and adding value, and generally as a byproduct, the career will generally look at after itself. And you've kind of tied it in nicely, because you were talking about building trust and also communicating clearly, and that communication as a leader that you have with your team, you kind of have to communicate it upwards as well, as to this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm inspiring for, to create those opportunities. Because you know, sometimes they don't even see the potential, or sometimes they need the ideas that you need to give them and drop in their minds as well. And they go, oh, you know what, I never thought that you would be interested in that, but
absolutely,
this makes sense.
Yeah, but that's also something I always did, I think, and I always advised everybody, first talk to your manager, and then talk also to the HR department. Yeah, because your manager sometimes depends on who it is maybe blocking, because he has a good, direct report who is delivering everything, and he has an easy life, between brackets. Yeah, so it could be a limiting factor. Yeah, so always don't bypass him, but also involve HR and talk about your ambitions, or maybe also things you would like to develop yourself, because you would like to see yourself in a couple of years in this position, and for that you would like to have some, some education, some training. And that is perfectly, you can discuss it with HR, of course, with also your supervisor. But this is something you can manage, and you should manage, in a well way. And I always did that. And at the end of the day, then if HR is telling you, okay, forget it, next 5 years, no opportunities. If your manager is telling you, no, what you're doing is fine, and I don't see you somewhere else, and you still have a different ambition, okay, then it's a time to talk to you, Joel, and say, okay, Joel, what kind of opportunities can you find on the market? Yeah, that is then the next step. But I think you always should do that carefully. Yeah, in a career, and it's always easy afterwards. Yeah, talking about a career when you move everything, let's say, in a nice way. But of course, you have ups and downs, and from my accounts, also for me, it always looks nice and what I achieved in 20 years, right? But also I decided certain moments, okay, maybe, okay, I had a team when I was working for a company with, I think, well, a little bit 35 direct reports. Yeah, the next step on a new job, I had only a handful of direct reports. And then you could say, if you only measure yourself on, let's say, I would say, I know, your career level on the number of direct reports, then it would be a step back. And people say, hey, but how can you do that? You had 35 direct reports and now only 5. And I said, but this is a company what has a lot of potential to grow. I can grow with the company. This is now a role I take. But of course, hey, in this company offers me also a lot of more potential. So sometimes it's not only everything about numbers, it's also about what is the vision and the possibility and the DNA in this company you're looking for. And it worked out like that. So it didn't take me, I think, 9 months, and then they're telling me, okay, Xavier, come here, we need you for something else. So I didn't even talk about it. So, and I think that is something you always have to think about. Yeah, don't be afraid to, I would call it, maybe out of the external view, that's a step back or something. You have to take decision by yourself, be confident about it, and then go for the next step and work on that with all energy.
Brilliant. No, it's well rounded out as well, and so no, this has been a journey and an education from yourself, Javier, and I really appreciate it as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope somebody can get some good inspiration out of that. And don't be afraid. I would say mistakes are allowed. That's something you have to keep in mind. And nobody's perfect. So even if sometimes it feels or it seems like that, I think everybody will get a second chance as long as you are open for that and you want to deliver. So I think that's something you need to keep in mind. So yeah, a pleasure. So thank you for the invitation. Of course, it was great, Joel.